They actually, especially with the VHS player, the industry actually made a lot of money off it because now we have
Well, yeah, they
video
sold the
rental
videos,
stores.
they did the whole thing. But I'm just saying that this is the false. It's one of these things where, I mean, really laws should be from some sort of better source or better initiative than the fact that businesses are crying foul that have profit margins, you know, where their stock is going up 10% a year and the rest of it, they're not hurting. You know, Sony's not going out of business. You know, the more content they buy, the more, you know, they own movies from 1930 and they're still making money off of them. And the more content they buy, it's not becoming less valuable. And so they really don't have an argument. They're not going broke on any of this content.
And I think what we have to make clear is nobody's suggesting we should, you know, go communist or be socialist even necessarily. What we're simply saying is that we as consumers have certain rights, and the industry, the commercial, these industries, commercial interests are abusing us.
Well, let's put it this way.
Abusing our rights.
It's this right responsibility thing. That's all it's about, really. Yeah, as individuals have a right and have a responsibility to creators, you know, people who make content.
There's nothing wrong with paying.
Okay,
it's just
to them to make sure they get compensated appropriately. And as I kind of figure it, you know, maybe there should just be a fair standard for that compensation. Maybe copyright should be flexible based on how well you've been able to exploit it. I mean, if I make $1 billion off something in 1 year, maybe the copyright should expire the next day because I've gotten my fair compensation.
I don't disagree with that, but again, I'll have to show you that presentation. There are ways that the copyright system could be reformed to make that a lot more fair. I don't care how much money you make. Everybody should have the same shot.
And we're reforming it. The problem is we're reforming it in the industry's interests, not in the consumer interest.
Yeah, well, the part that gets really preposterous is that, you know, it could be a 1932 movie that I want to copy.
Right.
You know,
it's been extended.
and they're going
7
to create
years.
all this stuff, and I can't even copy.
It's actually 95, if I'm not
You know.
mistaken.
Is it 95 now?
I believe it is.
Yeah, they just think it extends. So it expires, they extend it. I mean, that's all. You know, it's never going to. It's almost like if we could rewrite human history, we'd still be paying for the round wheel. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because no one would give up a copyright. Because no, my ancestors have to have it, and their ancestors have to have it.
That's something. Well, and
it's not even
it's not even people's ancestors. I would have less of a problem if this was the children of an author of a work looking to
but it's a company who bought it.
We're talking about
a huge amount of money.
We're not talking about an estate made of people who will eventually die, and eventually that material would pass into the public domain. Right now, what we're talking about is giant corporations that can renew these things forever.
And they got their profit. They got their fair compensation for the investment they made. And that's sort of my point.
Right.
That's where the end should be. Is when you've gotten fairly compensated.
It's hard to draw that line,
and
though.
Well, we could draw it to the extreme, and it would never be as bad as it is now. But now it's a lottery. Now it's a lottery. It's a lottery. Okay, you're a creator. You're in a lottery. You're buying a lottery ticket. Okay, because most creators are going to lose. Okay, and the ones who win are going to win huge because they're going to have this huge thing, this copyright that's going to say for the next 50 years or 90 years, you can just keep making money from your 1 billion
I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem I have is corporations doing that. If you create something brilliant when you're 20, you write a book, and everybody wants to buy the book. You should have exclusive rights to that book for as long as you live. It's your book, it's your work.
But then you can find that other whole layer of creativity. Because what if I, as a creator, what if I can do something brilliant with a 1932 movie? By adding, cutting, and pasting.
But you know what? If the guy that
I could make something brilliant, but I'm not going to do it. If I have to pay $50,000,
if the guy that created that 1932 movie is still around, you should have to compensate him.
But why should I have to compensate his grandchildren?
If that guy is long gone, then it should fall into
I'm just saying that
he's creating a derived work. If we go back long enough, this was legal even with copyright.
Absolutely.
And he wouldn't have had to compensate.
Well, and if your work is derivative enough, it's even still legitimate.
Right. Even today, it should be. But the problem is that we have commercial interests.
Well, the problem is, the judge is
even if it is legal.
Okay, and if the judge doesn't like your face, okay, you could be subject to $1 million in liability.
Yeah.
Okay, I've seen it happen.
Yeah, it has
happened in court, and it's $1 million for doing a public access program. You know, and because he said something about somebody else, it was slander. You know, no one's even watching the show. Right. And this is $1 million.
And this is the thing is none of this is radical. What we're talking about is not radical. This is copyright has expired. It's always expired since the day it was created, at least in the United States. From the day one, there was an expiration date. I don't remember what that was.
14 years.
Okay, it was 14 years initially.
But why
then it got extended.
Why have an arbitrary number? My argument to you would be, why pick an arbitrary standard like that? Why not let the standard be something like fair compensation? Let's say you have a Department of Fair Compensation, FCC, right? Okay, and the only job of that department is to set standards in different industries. Okay, that say, okay, when you make $1 million off a song, or $1 billion, you've made the quota. Okay, so certain, art has this much, but you can have
I disagree with the idea of the government setting how much money you can make on something. I think that a time-based thing is more fair.
Let me just make the argument, though. I think if you do that, you will encourage more creativity. You will create incentive capitalism in the sense that you will always keep people to have the incentive. I don't have an incentive to do art in a lottery system because I look at the lottery and say, well, I'm not going to be able to win.
How does this make it less of a lottery system?
It makes it less of a lottery system because the exploitation is confined to a narrow window, and then new artists can do something new with that. New creativity can take place. Okay, because you can't just.
Well, right now it's now. If it were under the old system of 14-year window,
right? It would expand
arbitrary. I'm just saying.
That's right. It is arbitrary.
What I'm saying here is, let's say if I write some software in the first 6 years, nobody even knows it exists. Let's say in the first 13 years, nobody even knows that it exists. Okay, so it exists for 13 years, and no one knows that it exists. I haven't been able to market it, but guess what? In the last 14th year, I finally get the marketing to happen. It finally gets popular. I'm finally starting to make money on it, and all of a sudden you say my copyright expires. But there's not a fair standard.